Hello, I'm very pleased to welcome you in this session entitled Dispelling Myth about Japan's Pharma Regulator. I'd like to think about Japanese pharmaceutical regulation with you. I am Ayak Bota, editor-in-chief of Nikkei Biotechnology and Business. We are Japanese-based media covering biotech and healthcare industry. We are collaborating with Endpoint News on this event to share the latest information about Japan. It is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Yasuhiro Fujiwara, Chief Executive of Pmda. Hi, Yasuhiro.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Okay, and Pmda is a regulatory agency in charge of the review of drug and medical device in Japan. So first, I would like to briefly introduce Dr. Fujiwara's bio. Dr. Fujiwara has taken his position as a chief executive of Pmda since 2019. Now, he is a vice chair of ICMLA as well. Dr. Fujiwara was previously Director General of Strategic Planning Bureau of National Cancer Center and the Deputy Director of Hospital, National Cancer Center Hospital. He is a medical oncologist specializing in breast cancer. Between 2011 to 2013, he was a Deputy Secretary General of the Office of Medical Innovation Cabinet Secretariat of Japan and led health policy issues regarding life science. Dr. Fujiwara has authored and co-authored over 280 original articles in peer-reviewed journals, including Nature Review Drug Discovery, Lancet Oncology, Journal of Clinical Oncology. He is an active member of ASCO. He is on the editorial board of several academic journals. Thank you for joining us today. Let's share our understanding of Japanese regulatory landscape. So at first, I'd like to discuss the attractions and advantages of Japan. From perspective of foreign biotech or pharmaceutical companies, what are the attractions or advantages of developing new drug in Japan?
There are mainly two attractiveness and merits in developing in Japan. One is the size of Japanese market. If you think by country, Japan has the third largest pharmaceutical market and the second largest medical devices market in the world. The other is the high predictability. I'll explain three factors behind it. Firstly, the review period of new drug application in Japan is almost the same as that in the United States and faster than Europe. Secondly, the review process is highly transparent, thus it is easy to predict the timing of approval. Standard review timeline is publicly available also on the Pmda website. After regulatory approval, the drug price is determined within 60 to 90 days and listed on the fee schedule for public medical insurance. Then they are usually all reimbursed. The price will not change even if the drug is approved under a supplemental drug application. Compared to Europe, where HTA is required, Japan's drug price listing is faster. In addition, the price is standardized, thus unlike the US, companies do not need to negotiate with multiple retailers, which we see as a merit. As I mentioned earlier, the timeline up to the listing is highly transparent. Thus, it is easy to forecast the timing of the drug's market launch.
Okay, so market size and predictability is the advantage. Next, please tell me about Japanese drug regulations. While there is an attraction, I understand that there is not well known overseas. regarding Japanese drug regulations, I believe there are systems like orphan designation or innovative product designation, like those in the US and Europe. Are there any differences between Western countries?
Japan is actively participating in international harmonization activities such as ICH, and thus our basic way of thinking is not very different from that of the United States and Europe. Maybe it is not sufficiently communicated to overseas companies, but there are various R&D supporting systems also in Japan. For example, similarly to the United States and Europe, Japan has accelerated review systems. It is a system to prioritize reviews on products designated as orphan drugs or sakigake. This is a system for innovative products, which is similar to breakthrough therapy designation in the United States and PRIME scheme in the EU. For more information on accelerated review system in Japan, please refer to these slides.
Okay, great. So is there any consultation system for startup or biotech in the development stage?
We provide a wide range of consultation services. For venture companies, we have regulatory science consultation to give advice on clinical trial planning, etc., from the last stage of the selection of potential products for development until the early stage of clinical development. In the case of startup companies, there are some reductions in the regulatory science consultation fee. Specifically, we offer 90% off for regulatory science consultation fee and free of charge for general consultation and pre-consultation meeting. For venture companies, all of the following prerequisites have to be fulfilled. First, small and medium-sized enterprise. Second, another corporate body does not hold shares or capital contributions equivalent to 1/2 of or more of the total number of shares or the total amount of contributions. Third, 2 or more corporate bodies do not hold shares or capital contributions equivalent to 2/3 or more of the total number of shares or the total amount of contributions. And finally, net profit is not recorded or is recorded without business revenue in the previous fiscal year.
So you mean that the startup or biotech, there is a system they can easily consult. So how about orphan designation?
For orphan drugs, which are difficult to promote development, several support measures are taken. First, financial support will be provided at the development stage. Specifically, user fee for consultation to PMDA and approval application will be reduced. Moreover, an institution to promote development of pharmaceutical products. This is National Institute of Biomedical Innovation, Health and Nutrition, provides financial support and tax deduction for drug development expenses. Subsidy period is maximum of 3 years from the time of orphan designation, in which the company files an application for marketing authorization. Subsidy ceiling is maximum up to 50% of R&D cost. And finally, also the company can receive a tax credit for the subsidy period. Next, orphan drug products fulfilling certain conditions are prioritized for receiving consultations and approval reviews. In addition, re-examination period, this is the patent is protected, in which the data is protected also, will be set longer than usual products. Recent years, Japanese funding body, AMED, this is comparable to US NIH, conducts financial support projects for products aiming for orphan designation.
Thank you. So the criteria for orphan designations are different from those in the US and Europe?
As to the designation criteria related to the number of patients, it is less than 50,000 in Japan and 200,000 in the United States. In addition, the designation criteria relate to medical needs and feasibility of development have to be met in Japan.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier about Sakigake for innovative products, which is like breakthrough therapy in US and PRIME in EU. I think is there any innovative drug candidate? There is many innovative drug candidates, but what kind of requirement are needed to receive designation?
There are 4 designation criteria for Sakigake. First, the drug must have a new mode of action, which is different from existing approved drugs. Second, the target disease is severe and life-threatening or no curative disease. Third, there is no existing approved drugs or significant improvement in efficacy or safety is probable compared to existing drugs and therapies. And finally, new drug application for drug is to be submitted in Japan for the first time in the world or at the same timing as the first NDA submission to other national regulatory authorities. But it is of note, the application date of the first country is deemed to be the initial date for the calculation. An application made within 3 months of the initial date are deemed to be applications submitted simultaneously.
Oh, wonderful. So are there any aspect of Japan's review system that you'd like to highlight when compared to the US FDA's review system?
As an example of other systems, US FDA has rolling review system. In Japan, there is a similar system called prior evaluation consultation for drugs. In this system, data to be submitted will be assessed before formal approval application, and as a result, the review period is expected to be shorter. Compared to the United States FDA, there is a difference in the cost, including user fee, incurred during the period from pre-application up to post-marketing of new drugs. In the case of Pmda Japan, average new drugs cost around $940,000, whereas in the case of FDA, they cost around $4,900,000, which is 5.2 times more than PMDA. Also this year, Japan revised its drug price system, and I think it will be described in the first session Mr. Mizutani has done.
Okay, thank you. So now we have some understanding of Japanese regulation. So now let's move on to the next topic. In recent years, so-called drug lag and drug loss has become an issue in Japan. And where new drugs approved overseas are not developed in Japan, or the development process is delayed in Japan. And drug lag and drug loss are particularly noticeable in pediatric drugs and drugs for rare disease. Why drug lag and drug loss occur in Japan with similar regulation as in the West?
As of March 2023, there are 86 drugs which are approved in the United States or EU, but not yet started development in Japan. It is noted that drug lag loss, that means applications for approval, are not performed in the first place, arises. The analysis of trends for 86 drugs found that The percentage of startup company originated orphan or pediatric drugs are relatively large. As I explained earlier, there is no big difference between Japan and the United States or Europe in terms of basic way of thinking regarding drug development or regulatory reviews. And Japan also has various regulatory systems in place. However, the current state is that the information about Japanese regulatory system does not reach our target audiences overseas well enough. One of the reasons would be that our dissemination of information in English is not enough.
So what kind of measures are being taken to address this issue in Japan?
Drug growth issues are described in the interim report of the Cabinet Secretariat published in May this year. Moreover, strategic goal and action plan is made public on the Cabinet Secretariat website in July. Considering this interim report as measures addressing pharmaceutical challenges, PMDA provides, firstly, support for practical application of orphan and pediatric drugs, etc. And secondly, environmental improvement and information dissemination to introduce innovative drugs into Japan.
Okay, so please tell me a little bit more about each measure. What efforts are you making to promote development of orphan drug and pediatric drugs?
Now let me explain the measures taken to promote development of pediatric drugs and orphan drugs. Firstly, this year, we established the Consultation Center for Pediatric and Orphan Drugs Development to further enhance the PMDA's existing system and improve consultation environment necessary for the development of pediatric drugs and orphan drugs. For further details, please refer to these slides. And secondly, we expanded the scope of orphan designation by moving the timing of designation up to the non-clinical stage in early development and so on. Our intention is to promote orphan drug development, and through this measure, we expect a large number of products with orphan designation this year. For pediatric drugs, there already is a designation system for specific use products, similar to orphan designation. This system is to promote research and development of drugs whose medical needs are unmet significantly. Once a product is designated as a specific use product, the product is subject to priority consultation, priority review, financial support for development, and tax deduction. To further promote development of pediatric drugs, we make efforts in changing the re-examination period given, taking measures related to drug price listing, and improving the development of environmental for pediatric drugs, etc. Furthermore, it is optional to make a development plan for pediatric drug during development for adults. However, Japan intends to have it a mandatory effort to prepare a development plan also for pediatric, and discussions are ongoing within the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare.
Okay, sure, I understand. So next, I would like to hear about effort to introduce innovative drugs or therapeutics into Japan. And when developing drugs in Japan, are clinical trials in Japanese people necessary?
Concerning drugs whose development is taking place outside Japan, Ministry of Health and Labor Welfare's study group discussed the necessity of phase 1 trials in Japanese before the start of multi-regional trials. So far, PMDA has not uniformly required Japanese patients' phase 1 trials before initiating multi-regional clinical trials. However, many companies recognize the necessity of conducting such phase 1 trials before the start of multi-regional trials. Moreover, it has been pointed out that in some cases, companies give up developing drugs in Japan because they want to avoid any delay in the start of phase 3 trials. Consequently, the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare issued a notification in December 2023, clearly stating that, in principle, an additional phase 1 trial in Japanese is not needed if the safety and tolerability in Japanese participants can be explained and the safety is clinically acceptable and manageable based on the available data. English version of this notification was simultaneously issued, thus you can find that on PMDA website.
Okay, I understand that the cases where NDA application can be made without clinical trials in Japanese people have been clarified, and notification was issued from MHLW in October this year.
In addition, for orphan drugs, etc., whose confirmatory clinical trials are conducted only overseas, the submission of approval applications without clinical study data in Japanese patients is currently possible if those drugs meet certain requirements. This is a measure to minimize the disadvantage caused by drug loss for Japanese patients. Those requirements are as follows. First, overseas clinical trials for primary evaluation have already been conducted properly. It is difficult to newly conduct additional trials due to very few patients, etc. And third, the benefits for Japanese patients are expected to outweigh the risk in general, based on the information available on efficacy and safety. Concerning the dissemination of information overseas, we participate in academic meetings and conferences to provide information about Japanese regulations. Moreover, we will establish an office in Washington, D.C., intending to locally disseminate information on Japanese regulatory systems.
Okay, so now as a final topic, please tell us about disseminating information overseas. So Japan has been disseminating various information in Japanese so far. I think it is difficult to understand from overseas. So for the rest of the time, let's talk about PMDA's communication to overseas. You already mentioned PMDA will open an office in Washington, D.C. in 2024, this year, so in the next 2 months. And what kind of role will this office play? Will it handle inquiries from biotech or pharmaceutical companies?
PMDA Washington, D.C. office will be established in 2024. I'm confident that this will surely help us to work more flexibly and directly with the US FDA and startup companies in the United States without time zone difference. As you know, the development of innovative pharmaceuticals and medical devices is increasingly being led by startup and venture companies. In this situation, close cooperation and collaboration between PMDA and the United States FDA is more required. In addition, it is necessary to reach out to startup and venture companies directly to provide Japanese regulatory information, which will help them to develop their products also in Japan. Therefore, the mission of the Washington, D.C. office are, first, to strengthen regulatory cooperation and direct information exchange with the US FDA and related administrative agencies on regulatory affairs of pharmaceuticals and medical devices, including cell and gene therapy products. Second, to promote timely and direct dissemination of information on Japanese regulation in English at office without time zone difference. And finally, to offer consultation services in English to startup and venture companies for early development of their products in Japan. I see the establishment of Washington DC office as an opportunity for PMDA to become more internationally oriented.
Okay, so you mentioned that the PMDA will respond in English, but could you please tell us more specifically?
Concerning the CTD Part 3 to 5, we have already accepted English documents as documents attached in the application for approval. From September 2024 this year onwards, foreign companies without a Japanese corporation or without an office in Japan are allowed to submit all documents in English, including application form and a draft package insert. In the case of consultation, not all documents are allowed in English, but reports on clinical trials, etc., we accept English documents.
So regarding the NDA, are there any website where necessary information such as official notification can be understood in English?
Recently, important notifications are published in English as well as in Japanese. These Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare notifications are also posted on PMDA website. Going forward, we will continue to enhance dissemination of information in English.
Okay, so lastly, I would like to a brief message from Dr. Fujiwara for those in biotech and pharmaceutical companies.
In conclusion, it is advantageous to develop new drugs in Japan because Japanese market is large, highly predictive reviews are almost as fast as the United States or faster than Europe, and Japan has regulatory system similar to those in the United States and Europe. We also addressing drug loss issues flexibly as a measure to promote development for pediatric and orphan drugs. We have already enhanced PMDA's review consultation systems. Moreover, we will establish the Washington DC office as our overseas hub. From there, we will provide information and consultation about Japanese regulatory system in English in a timely and direct manner. Today's information is posted on the website. Please visit the PMDA website. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. So I think we can understand much more about the Japanese regulation. So thank you so much, Dr. Fujiwara, today, and thank you for your time today. Thank you.